Hello, family. Welcome to another episode of Role Model Experts Cafe. I am your host, Dr. L, the Parent Whisperer, and today with me I have a very special guest, Ms. Stacy Westman. She's amazing. I love how she shows up in the world, and I love her passion and what she's all about. I wanted to bring her on and have her talk to you guys about her expertise and what she wants to do. And I will let her take it from here. Stacy, without further ado, welcome to the show and glad to have you here.
Thank you so much for having me this morning.
Stacey, can you tell us a little bit about yourself, your personal story, how you came to do what you do, and go from there?
Sure. So, I didn't know I cared much about nutrition or what my kids eat until I became a mother. Um, After a really difficult pregnancy, I discovered I didn't know how to cook enough to feed myself, let alone my kids. And when my kids started learning to eat solids, I discovered I had a picky kid, and I had no idea that that was a thing. I ended up feeding him food and then he would promptly vomit. So he had a texture issue
Mm.
that I was beside myself to correct. And I talked to everybody I could think of, the local nurses, the library, like, 'cause they have all sorts of books and resources, right? The Parent Link Center, anybody I could connect with, all the moms groups on Facebook and everywhere else. But nobody was able to give me an idea of how to approach this. They just said, well, eventually he'll eat, he won't starve. And that's not the most helpful thing to say to somebody who's been cleaning up puke for the fifth meal in a row.
Right. And also, I was just going to mention, especially when I was in clinic, some of the picky eaters, one of the things was if they don't eat and they don't grow, there's this diagnosis called failure to thrive. This is
Totally.
not a good diagnosis for a kid to have. This is very bad. So that would be like the last thing I would ever want to see on a child's report, basically.
Well, definitely. I know that a lot of the nurses every year, you get your wellness check, they measure the head and the growth and everything.
Right.
And they would tell me, well, he's undersized. I'm like, okay, I'm doing what I can, and obviously I can't do more. What do you recommend? Well, just make sure he eats this, and this, make sure he gets blah, blah, blah. But how do you make that happen? Was the real challenge for me. And so he's always like, he's 17 now. He's a great eater now, but the initial start of his life, it was very complicated. So,
And a lot of parents, I guess, in all of this, they have this guilt factor that's built in too, right? It's like, am I not
yes,
being a good parent, or why can't I do what I'm supposed to do, right?
absolutely. The guilt, oh, you feel so bad. It's like you're trying your best to be a great parent and to raise your kid to be healthy. And it's honestly, it's debilitating to think that I am failing at the most basic needs for my child.
Right, exactly. So, in your experience, what turned it around for you when you were going through all of this?
I had to, well, it's a few different ways that I managed, but I had to learn how to cook first of all. And because once I learned how to cook, I learned how to modify the meals that we made. So if the textures were the issue, as it was for him, I could change the meals to prevent the texture issues from, making him gag or vomit up whatever he was eating. I also found a few meals after a trial and error that he would eat every time. And so I made sure those meals were in the rotation, and I supplemented those meals by adding extra nutrition into them. So he wouldn't know he was getting more, but he was getting more, like pureed vegetables, chia seeds, those kinds of things.
That's awesome. I really appreciate you doing that, and I know that it's not easy trying to figure these things out on your own and everything. And I know that in clinic, one of the things is people don't often realize that some kids, because of their development, some of the developmental delays, some of the different things that can happen, sometimes they can go ahead and um, either not be able to smell the food, which is an important part of being able to taste the food.
Yeah.
And then some other kids, they're either texture related, like you were describing, or they like to see the colors and how it's presented to them. So if it doesn't look an appetizing color, they wouldn't eat it. And then they might like it, but just they would never try it. And it becomes very difficult, basically. All right. So what have you seen over the years, basically, in trying these different things and everything? What have, in your experience, what are the typical challenges that you see people face, parents, kids, not only when they're out there trying to figure something out, but also when they meet you and they want to start with you, what are some of the hurdles that they have to overcome?
I think one of the biggest hurdles is like the lack of self blame, because a lot of parents come to me at their wits' end because they've literally tried everything else and they feel like they're failing their kids.
Mm.
Um, that is a big part of it. And also, this idea that I'll give you an example. My second son was born picky too, but he wasn't picky until he turned 2 years old. And then it was like a switch went off in his brain and he quit eating. I know you know what I'm talking about. So I did everything different with him. I thought I've mastered it. He's not going to be picky. This is awesome. And then he was picky. And so it was that idea that and he's picky in different ways. So just because it works for one sibling doesn't mean it will work for the next. Like they're
Right.
all different. They're all unique little creatures who have their own challenges.
Hmm.
And so parents who try to employ the same measure, well, this kid's not picky and it worked, therefore it's going to work with this kid. It doesn't always work that way.
Right.
And
Exactly.
so allowing your kids to be individuals and to treat them as individuals as opposed to the carbon copy molds of each other, I think is a really important thing for parents that come to me to remember and to learn.
Mm. Definitely. Definitely.
Was there a third? I didn't give you a third, did I?
I didn't remember a third.
So the third is just this idea that sometimes in desperation, we start to cook different meals for everybody in the house. And
Mm.
that is a big challenge that we need to cut right out,
Yes.
because
Yes.
it's a sure quick line to insanity when you do that. It's not fair, it's stressful, and it's exhausting. So I don't think any parent should feel compelled to do that for their kids.
Right. I actually wanted to mention something here that I know it's difficult, but I encourage all of you guys to keep pushing on and push through. And sooner or later, that barrier kind of goes away. But don't give up. Just keep doing it, because a lot of times, especially with kids that have picky eating habits, one of the things that happens is if you give in, then they become more picky, and then their diet becomes so narrow that it becomes a huge challenge for them to actually get their nourishment properly from different groups. Even if they are, let's say, they just want to eat nothing but broccoli, you have to understand that any food group that's repetitively used eventually can lead to buildup of different things in your body, where your body can actually show reactions, allergic reactions. I wouldn't say toxicity levels, but so you want to make sure you constantly push and introduce them to new things, new ways of having it, right? So definitely, I encourage you guys and I applaud you for just pushing through for that. All right,
Definitely.
Stacy. So tell us some of your tips and secrets on how you managed to overcome this. And I mean, some of it you already shared about how you prepared and presented foods, which is absolutely amazing to me to see that somebody could actually go ahead and rep- present food in a completely different way, where a picky person would eat the same thing that they would otherwise refuse to eat. So what are your tips and challenges, tips and uh,
I still have
secret
challenges.
secrets?
I think my biggest shift in how I dealt with my two kids was with my second. By that time, I started giving him permission to be selective, in that I would say to him, if he didn't like something, it's okay. Maybe not today, but maybe tomorrow. And I gave him permission to let him know that if he didn't like it, I wasn't angry or upset with him. And I also told him in that sentence that he's going to try it again sometime. So he's not really in charge of what I'm cooking, But I gave him that permission to reject it without giving him the idea that I was rejecting him. I think as parents, we work so hard to put food on the table and to make our kids happy or whatever. And then we feel really bad if they reject it. So it's a learning curve for us to like withdraw that sense of attachment to whether or not they like our food, and no, it's nothing against you personally. It's they just don't like what you cook today.
I love it. That is important, especially since you do it so often, right? You're cooking
Oh,
three meals and they're sitting in front of you
I did the
day
math.
after day. Yeah.
0 to 18 years, if you're not counting snacks, you're cooking almost 20,000 meals. So
Wow.
you might as well find a way to live with it, right?
And that's assuming you're cooking one meal per meal.
Yes, yes, exactly. And I think the other thing is, if you find something your kid likes, is to like write down exactly what you did and stick with it.
Mm.
Because, for example, my youngest, eldest, he would eat meat sauce and pasta, but only my recipe. So I would send that recipe to sleepovers with the grandparents, along with the spices if they didn't have that exact spice blend, because different brands taste differently. And I would send the exact right noodles because you know, kids are selective, but if you want them to eat without a fight and you find something, share that with your relatives so other people get to have that success of preparing food for your kid.
That's awesome. I'm like, hey, it tastes like mom's cooking.
Yeah, exactly. And if they have wins, those kids with wins, they're more likely to keep trying new food, to trust that they do like what you cook for them.
Right, right. That's fundamental. That's important. Yes. I love that. Awesome. Cool. What other things? I love this. This is such an important topic. This is so important both for building a relationship with your children as well as seeing them be confident, seeing them be able to thrive. So I totally love this.
I think celebrating your wins and making like letting your kids celebrate. So, for example, they may not like it today, but they might like it the next time you make it. So those meals I do put in rotation. Like I'm into sweet potato and chickpea curry right now, and my youngest thinks it's the most disgusting flavor ever, and that's okay. He doesn't like the texture of the sweet potato. He really likes like he'll eat fries. Like we have an active fry. It's I don't know what it's called off the top of my head suddenly, but you put a little oil in and it's basically a convection oven that sits on your counter.
Mm.
So we make roasted potatoes that way. If I tried roasting
Ah,
sweet potatoes with potatoes, he's like, there's orange stuff all over these roasted potatoes. I'm not going to eat them. But to get him to even like potatoes, we had to start with fries from McDonald's.
mm.
And then we started buying fries from the grocery store. And then we bought a fry cutter to make the fry shape and did it in the active fry. And then we made them shorter and shorter and shorter until they were small little cubes. And now he's 11, he'll eat them for sure. But it took multiple steps to get him to eat roasted potatoes. But we had
That's
to start
amazing.
with fries, which is terrible, really. But I mean, you do what you do. You keep introducing them to different textures and different flavors, different colors,
Yeah.
and eventually you find a way that you can kind of gradually introduce something you actually want them to eat.
Right.
So I'm working on sweet potatoes with him right now.
Well, in our family, and I'll tell you this first off that my kids are not picky eaters. They eat anything. But
That's so great.
but one of the things that we always talked about early on, and this might not work with kids who actually literally have a reaction, but we used to say, you don't have to like it, but you should try it.
Yeah,
Just to get them into the habit of trying things out, basically. Uh,
totally.
so that was one thing. And then the other thing that we used, not we used, but I should say my wife did, was she tried different types of food while she was pregnant because believe it or not, the kids can actually taste in utero. And also when they are nursing, they still can have the different tastes and flavors as well. So it is important to get that early exposure on as much as possible as well. But uh, my hat's off to you for all your hard work. I know it has not been easy, and and I know that what the stuff that you're describing is exactly how some kids really need this information, basically, so that they can show up as the full self that they can. So. So, Stacy, how can people find out more about you and what you do in your programs? Actually, tell us a little bit about your program.
So I have a baby new program that I started during the pandemic because all my in-person group work with clients stopped, right? So it's called Picky Kid Club. And what we do is we meet online monthly a couple of times for this group conversation dealing with the theme of the month. So last month we talked about letting go of control. And the month before that it was, sorry, I don't recall. But anyway, every month we have a theme. I
Okay.
get in guest speakers when I can.
Sure.
And we have a group cooking class as well. So we get together one other Sunday afternoon and they cook in their kitchens and I cook in mine. And we talk about the week, the challenges, what we're making. And these are usually recipes that we're trying to build our picky kids' taste buds a little bit at a time.
Got it.
So,
Is this something that the kids can participate in, or is it primarily for moms?
well, I have the moms in it, but I've had the kids pop in to say hi or to what it's really, if the parent is comfortable with the kid in the kitchen, all the better. I
Right.
don't definitely don't forbid it.
Right. Awesome.
And then we
Awesome.
work on, yeah, they work on their meal plans, getting their kids part of their kitchen, part of their meals. What can we create together? So it's all about getting the kids comfortable with food and familiar with food, and allowing the parent a place of support and connection so that they're not feeling like they're alone in this world of picky children.
That's awesome. That's awesome. We should have you on the Amazing Parents Network too. We should have the parents meet you there as well. So definitely. Um, and I know that when kids get a choice or get a say in how their meal is prepared or what they pick for it, they're more likely to actually try it or eat it and stuff. So it might probably improve compliance in that department as well. So that's awesome.
Definitely.
All right. So I will make sure that I go ahead and put the links in the description box so for people can contact and everything. Any final words of wisdom? Anything else that you would like to say for our audience members?
I just think to give yourself a pat on the back, because picky kids are one more thing in parenting that it's kind of unfair, and you think, how did I deserve this? But just keep going and don't give up, because our kids are amazing, and we have this amazing opportunity to help them figure out how to thrive and how to be complete whole little creatures as they grow up into adulthood. And the more adventurous they are now, the more adventures they'll be able to take as adults.
Awesome. I appreciate that. Wonderful words. Thank you so much.
Thank you for
Um,
having me.
my pleasure. And for our audience members, I want to definitely encourage you, if you haven't done so already, to go ahead and subscribe to our channel for future expert interviews as well. Stacy, I really appreciate you being here, taking time out of your day to talk to our audience members as well. And I really appreciate how you show up in the world and what you're doing. And for you guys to go ahead and check Stacy's material out and see if you can work with her. I am sure your kids will be happier for it as well. So, with that being said, thank you all for being here, and we look forward to seeing you in the future. Bye.
Bye.